It is difficult to take a consulting business from 6 to 7 figures. There are a lot of challenges, and there's a lot of maybe bad advice or missing pieces in the advice. So today I'm going to bring you a special guest who is highly experienced in this area. And I know that you're going to get a lot of great advice from my guest today.
To The Recognized Authority, a podcast that helps specialized consultants and domain experts on your journey to become known as an authority in your field. Here is your host, Alastair McDermott.
Today's episode is brought to you by Website Doctor, which is my other brand alongside the Recognized Authority. Website Doctor is a small web design agency that focuses on creating websites for professional services, experts, consultants, and people in the B2B professional services expertise space. And in fact, that's where the Recognized Authority came from when I wanted to create an add-on or focus on the authority building part of the puzzle. Website Doctor still runs in the background, and we've been building websites since day one in 2007. In fact, I've personally been building websites since 1996. So been there, done that, and bought that t-shirt. So if you're looking for a website for your expertise-based business, then check out websitedoctor.com and schedule a call with me. I'd love to chat with you and see if it's a good fit. The link is in the show notes, or you can visit websitedoctor, all spelled out, .com. And now on with the episode. So I'm delighted to welcome today's guest, Danilo Kreimer. Dan or Danilo, it's great to have you on the show. I've known you several years now, and I always love chatting with you. So I'm delighted that you're here with us to talk about revenue today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Alistair.
So you run your business is called the the Boutique Consulting Club, and you specialize in micro consultancies, and in particular taking them from 6 to 7 figures. Is that right?
Yes, correct. The main problem we solve, so to say, is boosting revenue and profitability
Mhm.
for six-figure consultancies.
So talk to me about that challenge. Like what are the challenges that you see consultancies facing when they're at that 6 figure level and they're trying to make the leap up to 7?
Uh, yeah, so the challenges are many. As you know, business is complex, so there's a lot of pieces to this puzzle, so to say. When you talk about making more money, growing revenue, growing profitability. But there are three main challenges, so to say, that we typically see in consultancies with this size. So six-figure consultancies. Um, and these challenges are mainly around deciding, learning, and doing. This is how I call how I label this typical challenges: deciding, learning, and doing. And we can talk more about the source of these challenges after, if you want to. But basically, um, they are very visible. So when we talk about deciding, for example, we're talking about strategy.
Mhm.
Founders need help making decisions. So they don't know how to position and specialize their consultancy, for example. So they end up as generalists, or they struggle to decide uh, what to offer clients. So they end up with a huge menu of services, commoditized services, or they struggle to decide what are the topics that they are going to discuss and talk about and create content around. So they end up with kind of a boring, unconvincing pitch, or um, these are all deciding problems, let's say. Um, and this is one typical challenge. Uh, the second challenge is learning. Um, and learning, when we talk about learning, is typically improving skills, but also kind of building systems and processes. So, for example, again, very practical examples. founders, they don't know how to set and measure KPIs, or they don't have the tools and processes to manage the relationships and opportunities. They don't have a CRM system, or they don't know how to manage their time, their tasks, their team. So these are all learning problems. And the third kind of typical challenge are doing problems, which is actually about implementing, kind of putting things into practice. So kind of consultancies struggle to generate leads, struggle to retain clients, struggle to, they don't know what to do to build a pipeline. They don't know what they should be doing on a day-to-day basis to reach those revenue targets. So I think that, yeah, these are kind of the overarching three challenges that we see: um, deciding, learning, and doing. And of course, the impact is very negative to most consultancy founders. Financial stability, stress, and most consultancy founders, they 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 trade time for money, really, and they would often earn more by taking a corporate job, which is a very tough pill to swallow when you think about why you made that leap into self-employment, or why you started the business in the first place. The vast majority of them would earn more money by taking a job, and this is something that we're passionate, and we're driven to help them with.
Yeah, and me too. And yeah, that hits me in the gut when you say that. Yeah, absolutely. I'm all about that, and I probably would earn more too. I'm probably unemployable, so that's why
Yeah,
I'm self-employed. Uh, okay, so interesting. So you've divided into these kind of three broad categories: deciding, which is like the strategic stuff; learning, which is all about the skills and maybe some setup stuff in there; and then doing, which is implementation, execution of basically all of the above, I guess, mainly the strategy. uh, the so let's dig into some of the strategy. One of the things I noticed that you talked about was the way it came across to me was you talked about being generalist, and it seemed to me that this is a problem with not being niche down. So if the topics that they're writing about are bland, if they have a menu of services, and as somebody who used to run a full services web agency that did everything for everybody, I know all about that menu of services because it gets crazy. Can you talk to me about niching down and removing options, and maybe like paring down that menu of services, and maybe even specializing down into one market? Can you tell me how you think about those things?
yeah. So I think that uh, it's fairly clear when you look at the market that if you're not specialized in at all, uh, in a specific vertical, or a specific service practice, if you're not specialized at all, it will be today impossible to compete, impossible to stand out. Uh, it, I don't see anyone doing that in the market, and in fact, it's quite the opposite. What we see is that there's a trend towards hyper specialization, and clients value this. I think this is important. It's not something that, uh, well, we're missionaries. We're trying to convince people to specialize just because it sounds great. It's it's actually sound advice for most consultancies, because that's how clients buy consulting services. They want better results than they would get by doing it, by solving the problems themselves, or by putting an internal team to solve those problems. So if your promise of value, so to say, is to give them better results, that means you cannot do everything better. You can only do some. You can only do a specific set of activities better than other people by definition. So you need to to niche. You need to specialize, and I think that most of the consultancy founders and partners, they understand that. When we look at research, they understand when you see surveys and less surveys, they ask, do you think that further specializing or narrowing down your targeting your services would be benefit to your business? The vast majority says yes, but when they were asked, okay, are you planning to take any action in that direction? Are you planning to further specialize or niche down even more? They would say no. And
So why is that? Like,
why
what's the
is that?
disconnect there? What's the disconnect
Yeah,
there?
what's the disconnect? So that's the that that to me now, after many conversations, I can only speak from our experiences talking with yeah, six-figure consultancies. uh Consultancy founders, they struggle. Again, specialization is a decision, and consultancy founders, they struggle to make decisions, or they delay those decisions because they fear making the wrong choice. Okay. and and why is that? uh, where does it come from? Well, they fear making the wrong choice because there are no right answers in strategy. This is the key thing here. So what niche should you specialize in, and which clients are you saying no to? There's no right answer. Which services will you provide? Which ones you will refuse to help clients with? What's the best way to communicate your story? There's no right or wrong here. There's no right or wrong. There are certainly best practices and starting points for you to think this decision through, but there is no right or wrong. You can make a business work the in any way. And I think you, in a previous conversation that we had, was it you? I think you shared with me a story when you were starting and you were in doubt over whether to specialize in two different segments, and you email yourself self coding.
That's right. Yeah.
What did he say?
He said, just pick one. He said, it doesn't really matter. Just pick one. Uh, and I think he was right. Yeah.
And that's solid advice.
Yeah. Yeah.
uh,
By the
and
way,
that's the
I
core
also
of the
emailed Alan Weiss.
decision.
I also emailed Alan Weiss at the same time, and he replied, and he sent me a very short reply as well. He said, "Click here to join my paid community, and I'll talk to you about this." So,
Yeah.
what I really liked about those two answers from those two people is they were both very on brand. So,
Completely on brand.
yeah.
uh,
Sorry, I interrupted you. Please go ahead.
no, but no, I think that's with your personal story as well. You can see that's the core point. There's no right answer in strategy. What matters is you need to make critical decisions on what, why, and where you want to take your business to, and how do you want it to look like in the future, what kind of clients you want to work with, etc., etc. And once these decisions are set, they will inform the rest of your activities, which so the three typical problems, let's say, that we talked about: deciding, learning, and doing, they're all connected when you think about it. Because why? Let's talk about the second problem. So systems, capabilities. Why do consultancy founders and consultancies, consulting firms, they struggle to learn? We can come up with a million reasons again, and I heard a million excuses. I mean, some skills are difficult to learn. like have a steep learning curve. So this is discouraging around sales, business development, strategy, etc. Some processes can be complex, so you need a specialist to kind of help your business adopt them or simplify those processes. But when you ask any consultancy founder about building capabilities, he or she will say, I know I need to learn how to do new things, or I know there's a bunch of things that I could do to grow the business, but I just don't know what's the most important. And why? Because they can't decide. They don't have a strategy. So the learning problem comes from the deciding problem. Um, and and they work harder, which is good, great, but I mean, they completely ignore the opportunity to work smarter, to learn the required skills, or to build the processes and systems that can help them accelerate this growth. Um, and um, and and the same is true with the doing problem. Why do consultancy founders struggle with doing what's important? And and I say what's important because it's easy to put more hours kind of into doing things that won't drive growth. So administrative tasks, or kind of spending dozens of hours kind of redesigning a slide deck to a client, for example. Like, this feels like work, but it drives zero pipeline. So again, why do consultancy founders struggle to do what's important? And the reason is, um, again, it's the learning challenge. They don't have clear goals. They don't know how to perform the tasks that they need to complete, for example. So you say you need to generate more leads. Well, how do you do that? So it's easy to point the finger to a founder and say, well, you should just do more. Right, but do more what? I don't have the skills. I don't know how to do it. I don't have the systems. I don't have a process I can follow. So it's easy to do when you don't have systems, processes to kind of limit the distractions, to make it easier for you, to kind of make you feel energized also when you do the work.
So just to summarize what we're talking about here. So we're talking about going from six figures to seven figures. So in the $100,000 range to the $1 million range in revenue. And what you're talking about is you're talking about the overarching challenges of difficulties deciding, learning, and doing, which are strategy, improving capabilities, and then doing implementation. Now, what stands out to me there is typically consultants are being brought in to help our clients with strategy. So why do we have so much of a problem in doing strategy for ourselves? Why is strategy one of the major roadblocks here?
Um, it's because it's our business, I guess. When it's funny because when I started working with consultancies, um, I, s- I started listing their challenges and researching and understanding more about their challenges and also fears. And this is uh, an exercise that uh, a few marketers would kind of suggest you to do when you're thinking about kind of your targeting, your ICP, your ideal client profile, creating personas, etc. Uh, what 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 do your clients fear, right? And I and at the beginning, my hypothesis, so to say, was that their biggest fear is a was about missing growth goals. So they're setting goals and they're not reaching them, right? So I really wanted to do that much in revenue, or to bring home that much money by the end of the year, and I couldn't. And that happened one year, and that happened the second year, and I'm stuck. And over time, I really uh, understood that the biggest fear is not about missing growth goals, because goals are arbitrary numbers after all. You put a goal. What informs that goal? There's a mission. There's a vision that you have for the future that you want, like long term wise, what I want to build, what I want my life to be, what's the lifestyle that I want the business to fund. So there's a long term vision, and based on that, you set a goal. But it's arbitrary, especially for smaller consultancies. You don't have investors. So what I believe in, after many conversations, is that the biggest fear is not failing to achieve these goals. It's really not achieving what they imagined when they started their independent practice. It's like believing you as a founder, as an individual, are a failure, or letting family, friends, and the people who support you, letting those people down because they supported you to start this entrepreneurial journey, and you're starting this consultancy thing, and you're not finding traction, and it's taking longer, and you don't know what to do, and you're stuck. And so there's a lot of there's a whole different emotional involvement, coming back to your question, when we're dealing with our own practices, than when we're giving advice to clients. Of course, there are consultants who are not so hands-on. Let's say they don't support with implementation, so it's easy also to give advice and say bye bye, and and you're not following up and helping clients actually execute and implement those ideas. But most for most consultancies, I think it's really the emotional involvement that's tough.
Yeah, so the strategy and the decision making is difficult because as founders we're so close to our own business that it's very difficult for us to and this is where, like, this makes the case for having business coaches or having external advisors or peers who support you. Having a group of people or having somebody who comes in and can help you steer your own ship, because it's very difficult to steer your own ship when the work that you do is actually helping other businesses with their business problems and their strategy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so what I'm taking from the conversation so far is that the 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 things that you're talking about as problems and challenges that consultancies face going from 6 to 7 figures are myriad. There are many different challenges. It's and it you've divided them into these three groups, kind of. But within that, there are also multiple different issues within those each of those groups. So if somebody's listening to this and feels like you're speaking to them and that they have these problems, if they were to take some actionable steps to actually start increasing revenue, where would you advise them to start? Like, where is the low hanging fruit for you?
It depends on where you are in that journey. Okay. um I think that what I would certainly start with, no matter where I am, is by looking for uh, objective, unbiased assessment or diagnosis. The thing is, there's so much um, variation in terms of what can be going on, or what are the low-hanging fruits, or what are the resources available depending on where you are in this revenue journey, that it becomes impossible to give kind of one single piece of advice for everyone who's in that range. So, example, um, if you're many of the consultancy founders that come to me that are, let's say, in the lower range, or in the very start in their journey, maybe 150K a year they're doing, um, they're trying to, or even lower than that, just getting started and taking their practice off the ground, they would probably, the best time investment probably would be to um, create a clear, actionable V1 strategy for their business. And this would include positioning, what problems they solve, who are they solving these problems for, the portfolio, so the service offerings that they will bring to market, pitch, which is how the messaging, how they're going to communicate that to the market. So it's strategy, and and you need that to inform all the rest. Of course, when we're working with kind of these smaller consultancies, what we're trying to do is what we balance long-term capability building and short-term momentum building. So we need to work on things that are important and take some time to 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 bring results, or to show the results. But we also need to create psychological momentum, positive psychological momentum, which are these quick wins that you mentioned. So these might be, for example, creating a KPI spreadsheet with specific goals for your consulting business, or listing all of the relationships that you have and you never organize them, and you now have a list of relationships, and we will enrich them, we'll categorize them, we'll map them, and, well, actually there are a couple of hundred of people that I completely lost touch with. And among those relationships, some clients, some potential clients, some people who can put me in touch with clients. Okay, so let's start nurturing those relationships. And it's much less scary, for example, when you start with the people you already know and who know you. You worked in the past, you will catch up, you will start to surface opportunities, your first opportunities. So these, for example, are quick wins. We can do that in 30 days. We can start creating pipeline, creating conversations. But we need to make a minimum investment into making sure that you have a decent strategy to begin with, and that you have the minimum amount of systems and processes to do the work that you're going to do. So it really varies. But what I coming back to your question, where I would start, if there's one kind of recommendation for every six-figure consultancies, is who are struggling to reach revenue goals, or don't know how to invest, how to prioritize the resources, that would be an objective assessment or
Mm.
diagnostic. And we can talk about that, but for me, it's really important for consultancy founders to understand the importance of, yeah, fiduciary advice.
That's a a phrase I'm going to get into with you in a moment. So it's really interesting the things that you've talked about here. Like you talk about unbiased external assessment, and you talked about the kind of the difficulties. I think you used um, the psychological. I can't remember exactly what the phrase you used was, but for me, where what stands out to me is as a founder, you're looking at your own business and you're looking at it through this lens and this prism that is clouded by your own emotions that are tied up with it, and there are lots of mental issues with that as well. And that's where the power of having somebody external, like a business coach or some sort of external mentor, who can say, hey, let's separate that and let's look at this in an unbiased way. And then the other thing was you talked about, you know, quick wins, like for example, simply following up with old contacts. And I've seen this work before where somebody who was a client of yours at one firm has moved jobs and they're now at another firm, and that second firm now has the problem that the original did. So now you've potentially got an access to a new client by just following up with that one person. And so yeah, I've seen that work really well in the past. So those are very simple quick wins. But you talked about like you have to meet the minimum bar of having a decent strategy in place. And it doesn't have to be a world beating strategy, but it does have to meet a certain bar. And so I think that's really crucial. Let's talk about fiduciary, because that's the word that I like to use sometimes. And I know that some people use that in a very legalistic sense, but I think that you're using it more like the way that I use it, in that when you take a fiduciary approach to your clients, you are saying that you put their interest before your own. So is that what you're talking about?
Correct.
Can
So
you tell me a little bit more about that? Yeah.
yeah, so you put the relationship before any financial transaction. Let's say this is how I see it, and for me that's key if you want to level up, to really kind of unblock revenue growth, especially for smaller consultancies. And the thing is, uh, so I ran an agency in the past, and I started looking at those. Uh, I started looking at stories that had a very similar pattern. So I'll give you true stories, Alastair. I'll give you three true stories to illustrate the problem, and you tell me if you can. Let's see if you can guess what's the similarity here, and what the answers
Awesome.
were to this story. So first story. So it's a boutique consulting firm. They lost their biggest client, and they need to grow pipeline. Okay, we need to bring in more revenue, more clients. So they hire a marketing agency to help them with lead generation. Invested a few $1,000s, failed. It failed to produce results. I asked the partner, what made you believe that generating more leads was the best solution to your pipeline problems? Okay, this was the question I made. Second story. So small consultancy, growing, with 4 employees, a lot of work. So they decided to hire 2 more employees, full-time employees. So they hire a recruitment specialist to help. So they spend time and money kind of vetting, interviewing, training the new people. The margins shrank. The partner came to me and said, I'm making less money. And now I'm worried that we're overextended. Like there's more risk to my business. I ask, what made you believe that hiring full-time employees was the best solution to your capability gaps? Third story: a friend, solo advisor, was expecting his first child, and said, I'm working crazy hours. I can't do this, is not sustainable. Okay. So he hired a digital consultant, and he created an online course with the idea, okay, I can sell this while I sleep. The course didn't sell, and not only didn't sell, but it also created confusion among some larger clients, bigger clients that he has. So I asked him, what made you believe that creating an online course was the best solution to earn more while working less? So three stories. And for the three stories I asked the partners, what made you believe that doing X was the best solution to Y? Can you guess what their answers were, Alastair?
I'd say they didn't have a good answer.
They didn't have, well, they had an answer, yes. They didn't have a good answer, you're correct. But I mean, some of them, they really thought that they could solve those problems themselves.
Hmm.
So, okay, I'm having this delivery problem, we're growing, so the right thing to do is to hire two people. Well, this is what you think. So you're self-diagnosed, right? Um, and so some of them really thought that they could do this themselves, but also what happens is they ended up bringing people, so a recruitment specialist, a marketing agency, a digital consultant, that pitch them their existing services instead of helping them uncover the real problems. And it turns out that the quality of this advice was not that good. You know, it was dubious. And and I have a friend that I have a friend that spoke to you, I think, in this podcast, Kevin Willen. He talks a lot about fiduciary advice,
Hmm.
and he has a great analogy that I love. Is, imagine you want to improve your diet. Why would you ask a butcher what's the best thing to eat? You know, they're
That is a
going to suggest meat.
that is a great analogy.
That's
Yeah.
obvious. That's obvious. They're going to suggest meat. And again, I ran an agency in the past, so I'm not trying to imply that these people are unethical, that these consultants or contractors or agencies. I'm not trying to imply that. Um it's just that they don't know better. Like, it's like asking, for a budget for a diet advice. They only know about meat. That's all they know about. So they're going to find something to help you with. Um,
It's like the old phrase: if all you have is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly,
yeah.
exactly. So
By the way, if that was Kevin Whelan you were talking about,
yes,
yeah, he was on episode 68 of this, and it was called "Sell Expertise, Not Your Hands." So
yeah,
that was great conversation.
he's a great guy, and really really competent. He has a community. Uh, it's been a while. I'll get in touch, Kevin. He helps CMOs, fractional CMOs. But
Mhm.
anyway, he. But I think that that analogy is great, and the thing is, yeah, you cannot ignore the conflict of interest. That's the thing.
Mhm.
So I think that consultancy founders need to be aware of that. Like, these founders are not exception. These stories are not exceptions. They
Mhm.
are very frequent, and they just consultancy founders, they end up wasting really hard-won money and a lot of time working on the wrong things. And
And you can earn more money, but you can't get that time back.
Yes,
Mm.
yes. No, the time is
Danilo,
lost.
we speaking of time, we only have a couple of minutes left. I want to ask you a couple more things. One
Yeah,
thing and this I think ties directly to what we were just talking about, but we briefly mentioned beforehand. You talked about the harmful effect of generic marketing advice. Can you talk about that specifically for me? What do you think of when you think of that?
yeah. So every now and then, someone comes to me and asks, okay, how come you specialize in working only with consultancies, with six-figure consultancies? Can you not help like SMBs as a whole, like small businesses? And of course, they're not implying that I should become a generalist. What these people want to know is what exactly makes consulting different. Like, do they really need a specialist? And I think this is a valid question. Um, we all know that there's a huge difference between selling products and services, for example, or B2C and B2B. But is consulting so different that you should be skeptical of advice from those who are not in the space? And my answer to this is, based on what actually happens in the real world, is yes. Generic marketing advice is harmful for consultancies. And I'll try to explain it briefly, but one of the best ways I found to show, to illustrate this, is by explaining to consultancy founders what credence goods are. Have you heard that
Yeah,
term?
yeah.
Yeah. So credence goods are part of the SEC, which is a classification of goods and services that some economists and professional marketers use. And it's about information, right? So the SEC classification, SEC, is based on how easy or difficult it is for clients to get or evaluate information, right? And the name is an acronym. So there are three categories there. There are search goods, experience goods, and credence goods. So search goods are products or services that you can evaluate before you buy or you consume them. So commodities like clothes, water, or podcast microphone, for example. So when people buy those, they know what they want, and it's easy to see and compare and measure the difference between different brands, specific attributes. So, for example, if I say I'm looking for the cheapest podcast microphone, okay, I can search based on price. Or I'm looking for something I can easily take with me when I travel. Okay, I can rank microphones by size, right? So these are search goods, commoditized. Experience goods are goods uh, whose price, quality, or whatever attribute you want to measure them. They can only be discovered after you purchase them. So, for example, when you go to a restaurant or a hotel or a hairdresser, for example, you hope that the guy is good. You hope the restaurant is good, and you can try to avoid surprises. Like you look at the ratings, other people's reviews, or no platforms that aggregate information. But you can never know. You will judge after the experience, after consuming them. You will judge the quality, price, service, etc. And credence goods are goods whose quality is difficult or impossible to assess even after you hire them. Okay. And this happens because the client or the consumer, they don't have enough expertise to make an evaluation. So this is where consulting fits in, okay? As well as medical services, legal services. Um, and curious, and it's curious because a common example of a credence good, it's also a mechanics shop. And I think it's a very easy way to think about that. It's to illustrate a credence good. So, for example, the last time you went to a car repair shop. So your car broke. You're having problems with your car. You go to the shop. The mechanic takes a look at the car, and he says to you, "Okay, you have a bumper damage problem here. So there are cracks in your bumper. You can go through a long time before you notice it. I recommend you leave the car here and I'll take a look at it. Depending on the size of the damage, I will have to replace the whole thing. But I've been doing this for decades, Alastair. So I can already tell you that for your car, your model specifically, there are 2 points that we often see problems. And we need to change the whole thing. Okay, leave the car there, I'll confirm. What do you do? So you are not a mechanic. You have no idea what a bumper damage is. And even if you Google or you ask AI or whatever, you will not be able to perform any checks. It would be very difficult. So the information asymmetry is one of the reasons why selling consulting is a lot like selling legal advice or medical support. In all of those markets, even when we measure success objectively, and I recommend that you do with your clients don't know how much of the service was needed, or how much was actually performed. They don't know because they're not experts in this. So this means that if you're selling credence goods, the clients have to trust the provider implicitly. They have to trust you. They have to believe that you will diagnose the problem correctly. They have to believe that you will prescribe the right solution. They have to believe that you can do the work. They have to believe that you will generate. So they have to believe in you. It's a trust-based business. So yeah, so it got a bit long, but but I really think that it's this idea of credence goods, understanding credence goods, it's very helpful for
Hmm.
consultancy founders because most of the marketing advice that you see out there, it falls short. It does not apply to this kind of services.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you. It's intangible, it's invisible what we do, and typically it's transformative, which implies risky, and
Hmm.
it's quite often expensive. And so we need a very high bar of trust. And usually that's passed through personal referral, but we can also do this other thing, which is create a body of work, which is, by publishing experts' knowledge and putting ourselves out there by doing things like this podcast or live stream, writing books and all of those kind of things to put our expert knowledge out so that when people come across as potential clients, that they can read our thinking and start to build trust that way as well. That's why I think the content creation part is really important, because it can help to cement that trust even if there is a personal referral, but it can substitute for that personal referral if there isn't. That's the way I think about that.
Correct. And content market is important also in B2B in general. It's an important piece in your marketing capabilities. It's just that, of course, it needs to be complemented. In the case of consulting services, it's a part of the piece, the puzzle. It's not enough. So, for
Yeah.
example, just to give you one stat, because I know that you're a big, I mean, uh, you're big in marketing as a whole, and you're a bit adverse to sales or business development ideas. Um, uh,
I'm not an outbound guy. Let's put it that way.
Yeah,
That wouldn't
correct.
be my that wouldn't be my first port of call.
Correct.
Yeah,
No, I'm not an outbound guy
yeah,
either, but I recognize the role of proactive and thoughtful
yeah, yeah.
outreach or
No,
relationship building.
I can get on board with that. Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So for example, there's this stat survey recently that I saw that showed that 81% of consultancy or of consulting buyers say that the quality of your one-on-one conversations makes them much more likely to hire a provider over another. So marketing alone, content you put out, how you promote your brand messaging, etc., it can only take you so far. If you do everything right and you get into a one-on-one call, a consultation, and it goes terribly, you will not inspire trust. This opportunity will be gone. This is not the same as when we compare to B2B, other B2B industries, for example, or when you have a sales team who's leading growth, or you have a product led sales. Um, it's different.
That's something that maybe we should talk about another time on the podcast, because there is something interesting there, because when we're talking about micro consultancies, the founder is typically both the salesperson and the person who's going to be executing, and I think that also complicates matters. So, but we don't have time to get into that thing today.
Okay, we don't have time. Yeah, let's schedule
but
another one.
yeah, but that is something, I think, just talking about that dynamic, because it's very different when you can have somebody else go and sell for you. I do, sorry, go ahead.
No, no, no. Please continue.
Okay, so I do want to wrap up, because I'm very aware of your time, and I really appreciate you taking the time to go over the top of the hour with me. What is the number one tip that you would give to somebody who wants to build their authority?
Uh, I would follow three steps. I would I would say pick your lane, gather knowledge, and share that knowledge. I think that pick your lane, because yeah, we can become a specialist at everything. So
Hmm.
first step here is narrow down and kind of really document what's the critical problem I'm solving, who are the people and organizations that will help solve this problem. Gather knowledge, so do research, work with similar companies solving similar problems, interact with others who solved similar problems and work with similar companies in the past. Start documenting patterns and ideas, and also put them in practice.
Hmm.
Real life. So keep what works, throw away what doesn't work, and share that knowledge among your target audience consistently. I think, yeah, you need to educate people about the problem, and if they're interested, share what you do to solve the problem. Charge if they want your help with the how. But yeah,
I love that you bring it straight back to revenue as well.
yeah, yeah,
Very
yeah,
good.
yeah. You have to, because I mean, you need to sustain a business. It's not a charity.
Yeah,
But yeah, so I would say pick your lane, gather knowledge, and share that knowledge would be the, I don't know,
yeah.
compressed way.
And what I like about that, actually, and we didn't talk about this beforehand, but that actually maps onto how I view the journey to authority, which is where people need to specialize, and then once they specialize, they're this invisible specialist. They can start to do some research and then publish around that. And so, like, I would see that as very much equivalent to what you've just talked about. So, yeah, I 100% am with you on that. I have two final questions. Is there a business book or resource that's been important for you personally that you recommend?
So I love reading. There's a huge list of books that I typically recommend, specifically for business development, for professional service firms, consultancies. Uh, I think that one, not specific a book, But there's one powerful essay that I recommend every consultancy founder to read. It's from David Meister. You can find it online. And it's called The Problem of Standards. It's a piece I recommend every consulting partner to read. And the idea is simple. We say that we're committed to something, but we don't follow through. There's not enough discipline. You can have all of the tools, all of the technologies, all of the systems at your disposal, but if you don't enforce standards, then nothing will get done. So, example, I see a lot of consultancies that are kind of they 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 put up a message saying they're committed to client satisfaction. They put clients in first place. They're client centric. Okay, this is what you preach, but how many of your clients do you ask for feedback at the end of every project? How many clients do you ask for feedback at the middle of the project? How many clients uh, how many client case studies you share? So you say you're committed to client satisfaction, but you're not doing the basic things that you need to that you need to have in place in order to actually satisfy clients. So I think that, yeah, most firms like to preach high standards of quality or thought leadership or whatever it is, but very few actually enforce those standards, and you get the benefit of which you actually do. That's the idea. So I really recommend this short essay to anyone. You can find it online.
Yeah,
Uh,
I'll link to it in the show notes. It's called "The Problem of Standards" by David Meister or David Meister.
correct.
Um, Super. And do you read fiction at all? Is there anything that you love and recommend?
I read fiction, yes. I've been reading way too much work-related books recently, but I love to read good fiction. And my only criteria for picking up fiction is that they should be at least 20 years old. So basically, I apply the Lindy effect, as Taleb would say, to books. So the longer a book been around, the longer I can expect it to be relevant. And so for me, when I'm reading fiction, I want something that kind of blows my mind or like change the way I think. So I think I would recommend, like if it's one book, I would say Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse, which
Okay.
it's about a man on a journey for kind of inner peace. I don't know if you read.
No, I haven't.
Uh,
Haven't.
yeah, so
I've heard of it though. Yeah.
yeah, that there's a lot of it, but
Mhm.
for me, it's kind of the main reminder is that everyone's a different journey, and you have to experience things for yourself, basically. But I
Mhm.
mean, I'm also Brazilian, so if you're looking for reading recommendations, I would highly recommend also anything by Raduan Assar or Guimarães Rosa, which are brilliant fiction authors from Brazil.
Awesome. Well, Danilo, you thank you for all of your time today. Where can people find you if they want to subscribe to your email list or follow you on social media? Where can they find you?
LinkedIn or boutiqueconsultingclub.com.
Awesome.
You
And
can find everything there.
I'll put links to those in the show notes as well.
Yes, and I would highly recommend all of your listeners, if you're looking to kind of, if you're stuck or anything of these ideas, the ideas that I share here that we talked about resonated, I highly recommend you to watch my mini masterclass. I have a mini masterclass where I talked about the very first thing I recommend consultancy founders to work on. um, I don't require any email opt-in form. whatever. I will share the link. Maybe you can put in the description, Alistair, and
100%.
they can take action from that.
Awesome. Sounds good. Well, Danilo Kreimer, you are the founder of the Boutique Consulting Club. I really appreciate that you came here today and gave me an hour of your time, not just in your second language, but actually in your third language. I have so much respect for people who can come on and do podcasts and guest on podcasts in other languages like that. So thank you so much for coming on and chatting with us today.
You're welcome, Alistair. And yeah, let's schedule the next one.
Awesome.